Hello. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic ClioCon so far. I can attest to the fact that it's about to get better in this session. We have a very special speaker with us today, Kim Bennett. Kim is the co-founder of Fidu, the complete client experience platform for legal teams selling, delivering, and scaling subscription and flat fee legal services. In addition to co-founding Fidu, Kim is a leading legal industry disruptor, a subscription design strategist, a speaker, and a tech enthusiast. For nearly 15 years, she ran K. Bennett Law, LLC, one of the first virtual brand strategy law firms delivering subscription and flat fee legal services to CEOs and executive teams. Beyond Fidu and her law practice, Kim is the founder of Designing the New Legal, served on the governing council for the ABA Center for Innovation, and is a former planning board member of ABA Tech Show. She has been an advisor to companies like Casetext and has been recognized as a woman of legal tech and VLEX Fast 50 honoree. With that, I'm honored to welcome Kim to the stage.
Thank you. Good morning. Excited to be here to talk all things legal design and client experience. And so I love interactive talks. So I'll say that first. We will have time for Q&A, but if there's like something pressing, write it down, make sure you ask it, because I think the best way to learn is to ask. And if you don't ask, then we're staying in the position that we were when we first came in. And so feel free to challenge me. But I think at first I was like nervous following keynote, but actually it's great because fun fact about me, I am a PhD dropout. So I was in a JD PhD program where I studied both law and clinical psychology. And a lot of what was talked about this morning and a lot of what I apply to think about how to design a client experience comes from my psychological training. And so one of the things was all about active listening. And I think it was said earlier, reflective listening. And that's a big part of how I think about working with clients and how I think one of the best opportunities that exists today for us is to step back into the human side of the law, right? And that maybe with all the technology we had and maybe with the billable hour, some of that was missing. And now we have the opportunity to step back into that. So with that, we're going to talk all about reimagining client-centered services and that experience and what that looks like for you. So again, I'm Kim Bennett, CEO and co-founder of Fidu. And so like I said, I was a JD PhD dropout, PhD dropout, JD. I practiced, but how I got here and how I got to care about client experience is because I ran a subscription and flat fee law firm for so long. And when you run a subscription and flat fee law firm, that means you really do care about how your clients engage with you on those lull times when you're not in the midst of high energy work or stressful work. How do you have a client say yes to you month after month, year after year? While I would say today I have a micro practice, and that is because I've developed relationships with clients over the years that have lasted still 8 years in the running as my longest client at this point, and they still are with me, even though now I spend most of my time as the co-founder of Fidu. So you have the opportunity to develop long-term relationships where you could step into being that human, and that's what I want to talk about today. So I always love to begin with a quote, and I will reference her book for you to grab at the end. And so I think as we're thinking about legal design and we're thinking about how we show up for our clients, we're thinking about client-centered services, it's all about intention, right? And let's just talk about what intention is. And intention is a sum total of how you show up and experience the world and how you experience the world around you. It's who you are being in every moment. And that's what you want to start thinking about, who you're being, how your clients are showing up, what's happening. I think the keynote this morning was kind of talking about the underlying reasons for why something is happening for people. And the way you get there is not just by letting it happen, is that you being very intentional about designing that experience that you want. So here's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about today. First, a little bit about client experience design. We'll go over it a little bit. Then we'll talk about a framework for reimagining your services that you can leverage, hopefully immediately, as you move towards building a more client-centered experience. And then we'll talk about your next best action. So I want to start by saying that we're in an age where the billable hour is being significantly challenged. As you know, I said it before, I did a subscription in Flaffy Law Firm. In fact, I hate the billable hour. I think it is the worst thing that came into the legal industry. And I think we have an opportunity right now to reimagine how we show up. The billable hour drives inefficiency. It puts a lot of friction in between our client relationship, right? We have ourselves becoming the bank and chasing money, and all those things impact the client experience, even if we don't think it does. If how many people, every time your client calls, you love picking up the phone? Oh, no one. How many people encourage their client to call them? How many people discourage your clients to call them? How many people, every time your client calls them, you send them out, well, you track like a 10th of an hour, to 15th an hour. You track time every time your client calls. So what do we think is happening behind the scenes with our clients when they pick up that phone? They're questioning, is this going to cost me something else? They're not thinking about how can I get support on an issue or an opportunity, unlock something that might be happening in my life, right? And that's the tension that is being built up with the billable hour. That's the tension that's being built up that's impacting your client experience. That's the tension that's being built up that then doesn't allow for the client to communicate with you, to tell you what's happening. And quite frankly, your best client is a repeat client. So by not answering the phone, you're losing money. By not answering the phone, you're not maybe getting a referral. By not answering the phone, right? Who knows what you could have stopped or prevented to give them the next best opportunity to mitigate risk or, to go forward with something else. Ultimately, your best opportunity is to design an experience that you can work with, that your clients can work with, that allows for them to feel like picking up the phone is the right next step, right? You don't want to go after new clients every day. You don't want to chase $0 get to zero and chase new dollars every month. But to get there, to build a sustainable business in this era of AI, we have to think about how we're designing to reduce some of those frictions that our clients experience today. So speaking of AI, in addition to maybe the billable hour impacting how we show up in this industry, the other thing that's kind of pushing us immediately, and we've heard all about it, right, is Gen AI. How many people are using it today? Okay, we got almost, that's more than 50%. And if you're not using it, by the end of this, please start using it. Why do I say that? How many people think their clients are using it? Right? Does anybody think their client isn't using it? It's amazing. My mom is using it. She calls me all the time and asks me, and she's like, I want to send this email. You know what? I'm just going to drop it in that thing. And I'm like, Mom, just don't put certain information in. You're using the free version, right? But this is the future, right? This is what's happening. The train has left the station. But when it comes to client-centered experience, how does Gen AI impact us? It impacts us because it then says all the things that took us 5 hours takes us 2 minutes. It's like we heard of the story earlier where the client goes and gives you the rundown of the cross and everything that they want you to do at the case. The client is going to go do that with Gen AI. We might not like it, but that's the reality. Right? So these tools are in front of our clients. These tools are in front of us. It is transforming how we show up. But what can it not replace? You, me, your experience, your humanness, your personal connection, your nuance, the strategy, right? But how do you get to that? How do you make sure that you can connect with that client in a way that a tech tool cannot do? And that you're not fearful of the tech tool. That tech tool supports you in your ability to have more impact with your clients. That means you need to make sure you have the space to be human, to have an experience that your clients want to come back to, that they want to refer people to, and that's what we're talking about today. And that's what this is all about. It's all about design. And so I'm gonna give a few of the principles of design as we get started, and then I'm gonna go through the way I like to talk about it is talk about food. I don't know, everybody like food? I like food. So we're gonna talk about it in the food context because I like food. Okay, so when we're thinking about design again is about being intentional. Okay, let me stop for a second. How many of you, when you implement a new tool for your clients to use, do you test it before you send it out? Fantastic. Every single person should be doing that. That's a part of design. You don't want it just to happen. You want to know what that experience is like for the client. So design is about being intentional. It's about first empathizing. If you don't test it, you don't know what the client is going to feel. You won't realize that question that intake that you love. That might be 10 pages, that's okay. But it gets you all the information so that the client can relax and be okay as you work on the things quietly behind the scenes. But now you go through that experience and you realize it's questions that I don't have the answer to right now that are required. I can't move forward. It's stressing me out. You don't have all the information in front of you. You're not empathizing. So one of the first principles of design is being empathetic, is empathizing. So testing what your clients are going to go through so you can see where the friction points are before you even put it out in the market. Next thing is defining what's happening, understanding what it is, what's happening, what are the issues, what are the concerns, so you have a clear target, a clear point of direction as you're using whatever you're trying to implement. Third, ideate. Ideate is my favorite part of design because it's never set it and forget it. The best thing that I did for my practice was stop billing by the hour. But that didn't mean once I ripped off the Band-Aid and went to my first flat fee, which I think was $1,500. My first, I think, I know my first subscription was $500. And I will tell you they were both underpriced. Sure, I was technically underpaid, but what I was paid on time, wasn't chasing money, and I was able to ideate. Because once I did it once, I could see the friction points. I could see the issues. I didn't just let it happen. I was intentional. I thought about the moment, how I was being, what needed to happen, right? That's when we're thinking about design. Okay, fourth, then prototype, right? You think about it, then you test it, you put it out in the market, right? Ideate and prototype kind of happen side by side because you're always thinking about it. Like no document, we know a contract is what? What are we taught in law school? A contract is what? A living, breathing document. But somehow the rest of our practice, the rest of the way we operate, we let it set it and forget it. We want to prototype, we want to test. We want to put a small version of something out there and then iterate with it. We're in this age of high technology. Law has been slow to change, but in these last couple of years, Clio is evidenced by all of the new features, all the things that are pumped out. How many people have gone to many Clio cons? I think this is my 10th, right? It's my 9th or 10th. This is the most number of features that they released, I think, in my recent history. Amazing. Prototyping, getting it out. We as legal professionals need to get in that way of thinking. We cannot stay stuck on how we used to do our services anymore because Gen AI is massively transforming it. But what the opportunity exists when we think about legal design is that we could be a part of the designing of it. We could be part of what it looks like to do things different and to talk and to ideate and to put those potentials out there. So if you have a model, you have a way of operating that everyone told you no to before, apply legal design thinking principles and put it out and see what happens because this is the time for you to try. Because the law is changing rapidly and you should be a part of what that change looks like. And then finally, it's the test, right? Get it out there, test. So ideate, prototype, test with empathizing at your core, with defining as understanding what your metrics are and what your goals are. Those are all kind of the pieces of the puzzle. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna go into food because I like to talk about food. I love going to a great restaurant with my friends, with my family, eating. I hate cooking, but I love to eat. Right? Eating brings me joy, brings me happiness, right? When you see this, what do you think? What do you think? Smells good, might taste good. It could be, not wine, maybe that's apple juice or grape juice. But we like the food. This plated experience, this happening with food, how does this happen in a restaurant? Do you think a person comes back to a restaurant over and over again because it just happened that way? Or was that intentional? Did every step of that experience lead you to want to come back? And that's how you have to think about it. So get it out of thinking about your business. Think about the thing that you love the most. I like food. What do you like most? What do you go to? What makes you come back over and over again? It's not because they happen to put things together. It's because they were very meticulous about the details, about how they made things happen. And that's how I think about restaurants and food. So let's think about a restaurant. When you step into a restaurant, what makes you like it? Ambiance, the look, the feel. Some of us like the grungy, some of us like, a little bougie. I like a little both. When it's grungy, it just has to be good food. I need to be in and out so I don't see it. But the food is amazing, right? But it's the ambiance. When you look at this, what's your ambiance in your firm? What is it like? Is it messy? Is it friendly? Right? What does it feel like for your clients to step into working with you virtually or in person? How many people have brick and mortars? Okay, that's a significant amount. How many people are virtual? I was virtual. So my brick and mortars, what does it look like when they step into your office? My virtual, what is your online office? Is it a phone? Is it a Zoom? Is it a portal, right? What is that experience like? So the first thing when someone steps into a restaurant is they get an energy. You need to be doing that too. How did that restaurant create that energy? There's a designer behind there. They pick the colors, they pick the layout, they pick the glasses. All of that is intentional. And then when you got there and you sat down and you decided, oh, there's a menu. That menu wasn't haphazard. Now, we might go to restaurants that change their menu every week, but we also go to restaurants that keep it stable. Why do they do that? What's behind the menu? There's the cost of the food. There's how long it's going to take to prepare. There's what pairs well together. There's what's my skill set behind the scenes, right? When we're thinking about how to intentionally design a client experience, you have to think about what are the menu of services of things that you are now going to offer your clients for them to buy. If you don't have it clear, how will clients make a clear decision? If you don't have the price, how will clients know if it's the right price for them? These are the elements of being very thoughtful about creating these client-centered experiences. It is putting yourself, empathizing in the client's shoes and saying, would I be willing to pay this person an unknown amount of money to support me on getting divorced and about getting my will completed? Now, I have about a $200,000 net worth. And I don't know, will this cost me $20,000, $5,000, $10,000? No idea. What is that feeling that you're giving to your client? So in a restaurant, when you go to your favorite restaurant, what do? You pick, you know what you're going to pay. You pick it. They've sourced it, they've done all that. That's part of intentional design. But to get there in a restaurant, what's happening? Once you've picked it, then how do you get that same favorite meal on your plate every single time? Is it haphazard? No, there's ingredients. There's a recipe, right? The best restaurants it doesn't happen. They know to the minutia how much you need to put in. They weigh things, right? And I'm not a cook, but I like to watch it. My fiance, he loves to cook, so I watch him weigh stuff. I watch him do things. Me, no thanks. But for you to have your best and most favorite restaurant to go back and that meal to taste amazing, or if you like your Starbucks, or if you like your McDonald's, you know how they all work? In all the places they go, and why McDonald's is a place that people go to no matter where in the world? Because they have a process that has been scalable, that they can consistently deliver over and over again. That's a restaurant, right behind the scenes. So what are you doing in your business? How many people have processes? How many people have a price list? Who has a price list? Who shares their price list with their clients? Who has their pricing on their website? Less and less and less. If you're a client and you're empathizing with your client, do you just want to pay somebody an unknown amount of number? Do you want to bring your car to the car dealership and say, fix it, give me the invoice after? Let me tell you, do what you want, let me figure it out, right? No, none of us would legitimately do that. And that's what we're setting up when we're not designing our experience. Okay, so there's someone behind the scenes that's now taking that recipe and then making it work. If it doesn't taste right, if they put too much salt in it, whatever, they know, and they need to remake it because it's not according to their standards. It's not according to the process that they set up. And then there's that chef with their sous chefs, right? That then put that plate. So your plate comes out the same way every single time. Is that haphazard? Did it just happen, or was it designed? So the thing that we have to be thinking about in legal is, are you designing something or actually defaulting to what it is? And the default is what you do today, right? Design is intentional. It is the way someone experiences the world and all their interactions with it. Whereas default design, it's not intentional, it's just happening. So if you've never created an SOP, if you don't have a price list, if you don't know the services you're offering, it doesn't matter, you have a design, it's just haphazard. It's what I call the default design, right? And if we're moving into client-centered experiences and services, then we need to design intentionally. We can't allow for these things to just happen anymore. Gen AI won't allow you to do it, because if you don't provide clarity to your client, they're going to go to a tech tool that can. But the opportunity that exists for you to do that, for you to define what it looks like, just like the chef can do when they plate something. Because for you to get to a restaurant that you love, for you to come back over and over again, that restaurant had to make sure the ambiance was right every time, the service was right every time, you knew what you were going to be able to order, that chef and everyone behind the scenes knew what the recipes were, what the taste was supposed to be, that they can plate it and then get you to bring your friends right back. That's the experience. That's what it looks like. But in legal, we don't always look at ourselves as needing to worry about the experience. But I will say today that that is probably one of the most important things that as we move forward, because knowledge is accessible. Process, even if it's wrong in Gen AI, it's going to get better. It's accessible. But what you can't do is replace the human. You can't replace the nuance. You can't replace the strategy of putting certain things together that weren't thought about before. You can't replace the thing that makes you different, right? And so that's when we think about design. Or the alternative, this is the default, right? So you could go to the restaurant that looks amazing, food looks good, your friends want to come back every single time, or do you want to be the restaurant that just kind of is haphazard and lazy and things happen? I could eat, but maybe I'll refer somebody, maybe I won't. Again, your best client is a repeat client. How do you make repeat clients? You design for it. You're intentional about it. You know every step that they take. You know all the interactions that they have. It doesn't mean you're perfect. It just means you empathize and you understand, right? And then you move forward intentionally, right? Because what's happening with clients today? They're stressed. They have things that they're trying to do. Or maybe what's happening with you, you're stressed. You have all these tech tools. You have all these things that are happening. You're trying to keep up. You might be billing by the hour and you're thinking, well, how am I going to replace this lost revenue that something that I could bill 5 hours for now, I can only bill 10 minutes for ethically? How do I do it? Your clients are stressed on one side, trying to figure out how do they show up differently, or how do they respond to their issue or problem opportunity? How can they connect with you but not fear that they're going to have a $10,000 bill at the end of it, right? And then you're stressed because you're trying to figure out how to make ends meet, how to make this new way of working stay profitable and for you to grow. So it's all about reimagining how you serve from, like I said, from default to designed. Intentionally designed client experience is what we're thinking about, and I want you to use that restaurant analogy as you're asking yourself, every single touch point in your business, have you designed for it? And design means have you put thought, a process, a way. What do you want the end result to be, right? When a client first reaches out to you and finds your website, what do they want to know at the first touch, right? When a client gets on the phone with you, what's the first thing you want to do once they hire you? You want to go rapid fire question, or you want to bring them at ease, right? The things that we heard this morning was, what happens when a client that is used to being independent now hires you, they're going to have some friction. So you need to be able to respond to that. How can we reimagine that we can understand who our clients are, meet them where they are, so we could serve them and move forward? Okay, so when we first are talking about design, the first thing that we have to be thinking about is who your client is. Who do you serve? How many people serve individuals? How many people serve businesses? Okay, so a lot of people are individuals here, right? So who do you serve? Who is that individual you're serving? Before you can design anything, before your subscription or flat fee or client experience, you need to know who you're serving. If you don't know who you're serving, you're going to be designing haphazardly. You don't know who it is. So who are you serving? Ask yourself this first question: who do I serve? An individual, what? What about them? What's happening in their life? What's happening in their world? What is happening that brought them to you? What do they want to accomplish? Because a lot of when we're designing as legal professionals, we're designing to the transaction, not to the relationship. And so if you care about where the client is going, they don't care to get divorced. They want a happy life post-divorce. They don't care about a will. They want to protect their family so that they can have legacy. They don't care about their trademark. They want to get their brand on shelves. So if you're designing to your client, you understand their North Star, what they're trying to accomplish, not simply the transaction that you're working on. And as we move to more a relationship-driven legal profession, that means you need to understand also what this is and design for that. I do see a question. Do you want me to wait?
Not so much a question
Yeah.
as suggestion.
Hold on 1 second, because I'm sorry. Yes, hold on 1 second.
Thank you. Hi. So I practice elder law, and a number of years ago, I came up with my client. Her name is Debbie. Debbie is calling me from the emergency room at Beth Israel Hospital over here. Her mom is in the ER with her. Mom just broke a hip. She's probably heading to the nursing home. Mom was taking care of Dad. Dad's home. He's got dementia. Deb, okay, do you know if your parents have any documents? Well, I think there's a will from when my brother and I were kids. How many years ago was that? 30. Okay. Anything else? Uh-huh. Do they have a house? Yeah. And, sort of going through this mental checklist of what problems are just about to slam Debbie in the face. And that is how I designed my practice around the Debbies of this universe. And you can expand, I suppose if you're corporate, you can have, some member of the board of directors in mind who's having issues or whatever, but design that client.
Yep, I love that.
There.
And that's exactly what we're talking about now, right? Understanding who your client is and designing for it. Maybe you could think about that one person or the bigger audience that you support, but as legal professionals, we need to start thinking about who we serve and what they need and not simply the transactions that we do. We show up to move them along a journey, to get them to another place. And unfortunately, old legal will focus us on the transaction. New legal is going to help them along on the relationship and the journey, right? So first thing you want to think about is who your clients are. If you're not clear who you serve, if you can't tell me who you serve, that is your first piece of homework when you leave here. Because everything else I say doesn't matter if you don't know clearly who you serve, right? I serve CEOs and executive leadership teams of impact-driven organizations that were typically between 750,000 and about 10 million, right? That they were growing a team, they had some HR issues, but what they really were trying to do was expand their brand globally. That's what I did. I was very clear on who I served, right? You need to know who you serve so that you can then build for them. You can design for them. So then once you know who you serve, you want to think kind of this hierarchy. It's my least favorite slide, I will tell you. Could not think about how to design it better, but whatever. So when we think about who our clients are, right? Once you know your clients, then there's kind of two big buckets of things that you're doing with your clients. And I'm going to say, as we shift to client-centered experiences, we're moving away from matters idea and the way we think about matters to now thinking about services and projects, right? Where one group is like, okay, I have this client, I provide certain set of services to that client, right? And then under those services, I do these discrete things, which are projects, to move them along the bigger journey. So services today are focused more on journeys and outcomes, where our matters today are focused on activities and transactions. So if we're thinking about designing a client-centered experience, we want to get out of the transactional nature and move to relationship nature of how we do. So the first thing I want you to think about is you have your clients, and then what are the journeys that they're on, and that I can design the services to help them get to that journey. Now, it might be something that takes about a year. It might be something that takes 10 years. For me, the year versus the 10 years is flat fee versus subscription. Right, that's how I think about it. Whatever your model is that you're underlying to serve them, I want you to be thinking about what's their North Star and what are the ways you get them? What are the services? What are the North Star that you support? And then what we used to do, the transactional pieces, the projects, the application, the will, the court, the filing, I'm trying to think of all the things we do in law, right? The drafting of a document. Those are all small projects that get them to the bigger journey, which your services are about. So you know the client, then you start thinking about the work you do as one, going after a journey, and then two, smaller transactions in that, i.e. projects, to move them along towards that journey. If you design to the journey, you will keep clients longer, you will build deeper relationships, it will be more client-centered because you're designing for what the client is looking to do and not simply how we show up with our knowledge and expertise. Okay? All right. So I want to go a little bit deeper about what a service looks like and a project looks like, and the journey that a client is going to go on between them. Because when we're thinking about designing intentionally, the way I like to think about it, again, is through services and projects. It's a better way for us to align our work and the way we engage our clients over time. So first we have a service journey, which happens across the engagement. The lulls, your brand, the experience, how your clients want to work alongside you, right? The entire client experience from first contact to final interaction. That's your service journey. So if I am today, call out some of the things that y'all do. Just say it out loud. Thank you. Estate planning. Anyone else? Divorce. Outside GC. Okay, I was fractional. Chief Legal Officer. Yes, love it. Oh, into IP. Okay, great. We have a bunch of different, right? So from first interaction to last interaction, your clients aren't coming to you just simply for what type of IP? Trademarks, patents? They're not coming to you for trademark patent. They're coming to you, right, to expand their brand to become a global brand. The service journey is about helping them become a global brand. And then the trademark, the patent application, the copyright app, all those things are projects underneath it that you work them through, you help them through. But if you're just designing to the ultimate goal, you stop making the service only about the small transaction. You can then build a longer relationship with them. In estate planning, your clients are not coming to you for the will of the trust, like I was saying earlier. What are they coming to you for? They want to build a legacy for their family when they're not here. So once you do that work, is that the end point? Maybe, but maybe not. Did you help them get to that place? Do they know how to fund it? All my estate planning attorneys, I always hear, well, people don't fund it. Well, why don't you design that in your process? Then your service should be about making sure it's actually getting them to their goal and not simply the project or transaction. You need them, but we've been too project-oriented and not service-oriented, right? And that's the future. So again, service journey, let me go back to it. It builds trust, provides long-term value, and it creates a seamless experience. This is where you're managing the relationship. It covers all the things. And when you want to think about it, it's the engagement piece. What happens when there's lulls? What happens when we have to wait for an agency to come back to us? We have to wait for the court. We have to wait to opposing counsel. We have to wait for the client to give us the document. What happens in between? How are we educating them? How are we supporting them? How are we dealing with the emotional, whether happy emotions or sad emotions that's happening, right? And all of us say, I'm not a psychologist. No, but you're a counselor, right? There's counselor at law, right? What does that mean? How do we show up empathetically to support our clients? That's the service journey. So what are you doing across the entire engagement, from first touch to last touch, to keep that experience going? So that might look like how I onboard my clients, and I'll get into in a second with a little bit more service journey. But let me get into project journey now. Now, where you have the service, the entire engagement, the project are the discrete pieces of work you do in a defined timeline to move them closer to their big goal. My big goal is to have a happy life post-divorce. One of the things you do is one of the projects you do is understand all their assets so that you can have a better conversation about what that might look like and how we can move through the divorce process to get you closer to happy, healthy, financially sound life post-divorce, probably, right? And so that's what we're thinking about. So a project is its execution path for a defined scope of work or a particular deliverable inside a service and how that work gets done. When we're thinking about services, it's the experience. Projects, it's a deliverable. At the end of every project you do, there should be something the client gets. You have a call, maybe it's a summary. You draft a document, then it's the final draft document. But it's really being thoughtful about how that client in that project gets the things done. It's targeted solutions through a structured, repeatable work. That's what projects look like. It's about efficiency, outcome of delivery, and where a service is broad and it covers all the interactions, the project is very narrow. It's what we think about today as the work we do, but it's much smaller than probably most of us think about it. When you define your work, you might say, I'm gonna pick up my family lawyer's divorce. No, that is not a project. Divorce is more of an outcome. The project might be the asset, gathering. It might be mediation, might be one of the projects. Another project might be, drafting some of the final orders or whatever. These are ways to be thinking about your work and breaking it up so it's clear to the client what they're getting, and it's also clear to you what you're doing to help them along that big service journey. Okay, so let's kind of go through high level what they are, and then these are the 5. If you don't do this today, when we're being very thoughtful about intentional design, I want you to start doing, right? No matter how nuanced, how super special, how custom, how bespoke your work is, it should have a flow, right? The experience is not something that just happens. It means you took time to intentionally make it happen. You have to design it for it to happen. If you're not designing it, then it's just happening. Something's happening. The clients may feel confused, flustered, and as someone building building tech that does a lot of education, oh, I get this wrong all the time. That's not the point. The point is that I know I'm trying to be intentional about it, and then I'm working towards iteration and getting it better. I will put it out there, I will iterate, I will make it better, and then put another version out, right? So when we're thinking about a service journey, these are the 5 phases of a service journey that everyone has. How many people have these 5 phases in their business today? Okay, well, that's homework for the rest, right? Now, how many of these 5 phases, you know exactly what the outcome of each phase is, the purpose of each phase? I love it, right? You're being intentional designers, right? You're being very thoughtful. So first is engagement. And so everyone in legal calls it intake, engagement, and onboarding. I can't stand those terms. So if you leave here, engagement and onboarding, I can't stand intake, right? Personally. But it's an engagement process. How does the client pay and sign your engagement agreement? What are the steps? It does not have to be overcomplicated, because what we do in legal is we do intake. And it's all the things plus a 30-page form that your clients are filling out, getting really stressed after they just signed and paid a document. And then you're like, well, my client is not responding to me. You just stressed them out, right? You didn't think about the goal of the stage. What do you need? What is the job to be done in this stage? Pay me and hire me. Done. Do I need but how do you design it so it works well, right? I'll get into it in a second, but your engagement agreement and your intake form, we're going to come back to it. Second stage is onboarding. Now, what's the goal of this stage? When you're intentionally designing, you're thinking about your client experience, what's happening? What do you need them to do? Do you need them to start working on the matter that they hired you for? Or do you need to get them to bring down their anxiety and understand how you work together? To give them an understanding of what the process looks like so that they know what forward momentum is. A lot of times, yes, they hired us. We're the experts. We have the experience. But it's not simply to just let that go and we're the parent and they're the child. We should be working alongside them. Onboarding is your opportunity to start that, to educate them on the process, to give them what's going to happen next, to give them some work to do, but enough to move on momentum, but not so much to stress them out, right? So when you're designing a client-centered experience, when we're thinking about legal design, we're empathizing. Your client just paid you some money, if you're paying up front, because I like to get paid on time all the time, paid up front. Okay, client paid you some money. They signed an agreement that's long that none of us negotiate. So they had to go through whatever your engagement or your letter looked like. And now what? They still have their problem, their opportunity they want to solve. How do you let them unload without going straight into fire? We don't like clients to put us in fire, but we automatically put them in fire when they come into our business. Slow down. Onboarding is your opportunity to educate, slow down, and help them understand the process, and start your initial information gathering. You don't need it all. How many people need every single piece of information the first time you meet a client to move forward? No one. But how many people have a 20-page intake form? 10-page. Who has a very long intake form? I know you don't want to raise your hands. So if you have a long intake form, think about what you're doing. Empathize with the client, right? Okay, now you're in onboarding. Now 3, active experience. That's the time that this is the time we all know. This is when you're actually working alongside the client. This is all the work you do. All the day in, day out, the projects, when I talk about projects, that's where they fit in, right? This is all the work you're doing to help that client along their North Star. The service is the bigger North Star, but under active experience, this is where the different projects pop in and pop out to make sure that work is happening, right? And when there's no project, then you're communicating, you're touching base, you're educating, you're doing other things to keep your client engaged and informed when they're in the down and lull time. And then the final 2 steps, offboarding and disengagement, if you don't have them, you should have them. And the great part of being intentionally designed is that the active experience is probably where there's differences in your work, but engagement and disengagement should relatively be the same. So if you design it once intentionally, your iteration doesn't have to be like every month, every 2 months. It could be, every 6 months we make sure our engagement and disengagement process is working. How many people formally disengage their clients? Everyone raise your hand, in case it's on the recording, because we have insurance. Just raise your hand. If you don't formally, you need a process for it. It doesn't have to be 20 million. One process across your entire firm is how you start intentionally designing. Because what do you want to do in offboarding and disengagement? Want to remind the client of other things that you do? Remind them that you're here for them again if they need it. Remind them that they can refer out. And then disengage, keep connected with them. If you're a firm that markets, you should be marketing. You might be emailing them after. Pick up that email marketing. But when you have this flow down, you'll start realizing that once you design a lot of your business, the nuance happens in smaller pieces than you thought, right? But that means your scale is endless because now you know how each touch point happens. So these are kind of the 5 phases that I want everyone to think about, engagement through disengagement, that you should have in every service that you offer. What you should find, though, is that your engagement process and your disengagement process probably is going to be the same across every single service. As you grow and iterate, your onboarding and offboarding might get closer or have just about the same elements. Maybe there's one or two things that switch out, but the differences probably will be an active experience because different services have different things they need to do to help get to that North Star. Okay? So what you do during the service journey in lull times, you do education and training, you do roundtables and workshops, you do strategic business advisory. These are some examples of things that you could do during that time to keep clients engaged and to design an experience that's very intentional. Now let's talk about the other side, project journey. Right? So project journey, things that happen in project journey, trademark filings, visa applications, document drafting, strategy sessions, the stuff we do. The work that we do today, I would posit to say it's a project, but I would also say the way you are designing your projects are too big. You need to cut them down, make them smaller, make them digestible for both you and your client. If you don't have a single deliverable to that project, it's probably multiple. If you're saying at the end of this project, I have an action plan, a contract, I have a template, 3 different things, a custom and a template. Well, the action plan is a project, the custom template is a project, the red line one is a project. That allows for the client to understand your work and see what you're doing, but it allows for you to get more intentional about how you got from A to the final deliverable. So a project always has a deliverable. It's always very clear, and it's usually not multiple, right? So if you have multiple deliverables, is your opportunity to scale it back. And the reason why we're doing this, and when we're thinking about client experience and client-centered services, a lot of people want all the woo. The woo happens at the very end. What a client wants is what they paid for. When you go to your favorite restaurant, yes, it's nice if they brought me out a birthday candle, but it's not really nice if the food was crappy. Doesn't matter the candle. I came here for the food. The bonus is nice. A lot of us build to the bonus and don't have the foundation. The foundation is what you can scale and what a client experience truly is about. You can add the woo, but without the foundation, you're not designing intention. So here are your stages of project journey that I want you to think about. This is how someone flows through the work that you're doing, like they flow through your service. So you have a payment step if you need to do an additional payment. So this is an optional step because in the service, they might pay you for a particular service, and then there might be things that aren't included in the service that they might have to add on because, pivots happen, people change their mind, friction happens. So maybe that's optional payment step. But usually everyone has some type of kickoff, some type of work in progress, deliver, close. This should seem kind of familiar because if you do project management stuff, it's kind of what project managers talk about. But the problem is in legal, we're not designing intentionally. And that's what we want to be thinking about. Okay, so kickoff is how you start a project. Again, if we don't want to have our clients on fires, what do you need at the very beginning when you start work with your client? That's what you want. The least amount of information that moves the needle, that allows for your team to still move forward and your client not to get overwhelmed. Because what you don't want to do when you're designing a client experience is to overwhelm your client so that they shut down. We do it, I do it. Every time I launch a new service, I do it. I overwhelm because I don't think I am, but I know it and then I realize it and then I redesign. So it's not that you're going to get it perfect, it's just that you understand this and you're looking out for it, and then you're going to continue to iterate and design. Work in progress is all the work you do to move the needle, right? All the things you're doing, how do you communicate back and forth to the client? Deliver then is the final work product. So a lot of times, if there's not a way for you to deliver your work, you need to have a set way to deliver your work. What comes with it, right? When we deliver a contract, do we just deliver the contract? Or do we know and anticipate that client is not going to understand some of the terms, no matter how much legalese we try to remove from it? So do we provide additional support around that document so the client can reference it when they're using it? Do we think about what's happening in the client's life when they're getting that final deliverable to help them leverage it at scale? That's what this deliver stages and then close. So when you're thinking about client-centered experience, we're bringing legal design, it ends up being a lot less woo and a lot more function. Right? Functional, empathetic, understanding what's happening allows for you then to grow and scale the other parts. Okay. And so back to the comparison, these are the two. They work alongside each other. Every single service, every single time you're hiring a client, they have both a service journey and a project journey that they're going through. And so we have to remember that they have a big North Star, but they're smaller nuggets of things that we need to do to move them along the journey. So at any point, if you're a flat fee, they're usually happening simultaneously, an experience and the work that we do. And so you need to manage that. If you're in a subscription, you'll have a service going on and projects coming up in and out, but you may not always have a project. So you need to so that's why subscription service, the way it works and the way you could design an intentional client experience is to make sure in the lulls that you are providing education, that you're giving them other support that isn't looking like that small, filing or document drafting or other piece of work that you're doing for them. So these are the two things that every client goes through. So now I want to talk back to specifically, I'm talking back to engagement and onboarding is where I want to focus a little more time when we're talking about an opportunity for everybody if you're not doing it right now. And that's going to be in your documents, right? So when we first start, how many people have read your engagement agreement recently? How often are people reading your engagement agreements? Once a year, every 2 years, every 6 months? Call it out. Interactive. 3 months. Once a year. Okay, if you have not read your engagement agreement in this past year, time to read it. I love it. At least once a year, 6 months, 3 months. Why? Your engagement is, once the client says yes to you, it's that first touch point after saying yes. Is it very legalese? Can they understand it? Did you draft it in a way that humans like to read, not lawyers, right? Does it have all this? You need your terminology. No one's telling you to take note. This is no legal advice. This is just talking about design, right? No one's telling you to take out all the things that elevate risk. But what we're trying to do is reduce the anxiety for the client. So the first document that they see, the first thing that they engage with you is going to be your engagement agreement. It should be client friendly. It should have no legalese. We all know that. And you want to be thinking very thoughtfully about how it looks. Is it a letter? Is it more like here's an overview of what's happening and then the terms that goes alongside it? Be really thoughtful. This is your best opportunity to apply legal design in a way that no one's going to negotiate with you because you're either going to sign it or not. But you can see, how do I make it more understandable, more digestible, more client-centered? That is really taking a step back, reading it. Maybe, so what did my engagement agreement look like over the years, right? First, it was long form, 10 pages. It has all these attachments to it. Then I realized no one's reading this, right? So in my engagement process, then I tried to shrink it and think through what were necessary. What were these pieces that were just weren't required? I took someone else's example and I thought, okay, I thought this was the way, but it wasn't. And then I reimagined what that first cover letter looked like, what that first page looked like, to give them the understanding of what happens, to tell them what's included and what's not, so that they were clear when they were signing what they were getting. Your engagement agreement is the best place to bring clarity to your clients and an opportunity for you to make sure they understand what's included and what's not. Because as we move to less billable hours and more subscription and flat fee and other types of business models, your clients want to know what they're paying for. Your engagement agreement has an opportunity to do that. The second place that I see a lot of support that people can improve upon immediately, as I was alluding to earlier, is your intake. So however you do it, so if your clients can easily submit information, you have to pull, future tech will make it even easier, I am sure, right? As a tech founder, I'm gonna tell you it will. But when you're gathering information, you have to take a step back and say, do I need all this information immediately? A lot of times we gather entirely too much information at the forefront of our relationships. You don't need to know every child they have. You might just need to know they have children. What are the decision points you need to be able to better inform that client? To, first of all, again, what's happening with that client? They're in high anxiety, good or bad, when they're coming in. That first form needs to reduce it, not to increase it. And then you can always deliver it over time through that onboarding phase like I showed you, that then once that client is coming engaged, signed, first step, tell me about why you're here, tell me about your stresses, whatever you need to do. Then they're done with that form, then you can slowly drip out smaller forms to make that happen. All right, I'm going long. Okay, so my thing what I would say is how you're gonna commit. You wanna figure out how to take one small action after this to start designing. Designing is not about only woo. Yes, you want it to be woo, but you need it to be foundationally sound, right? You need it to be foundationally sound. You have the services journey that you could do to make sure you have those phases, and then you have the project phases. If you do those two things, you will move the needle significantly. You will make it that you could see patterns of how you show up with your clients, and then you can scale those patterns. So here are some best practices when you're trying to create really good client-centered experiences. First, you want to build playbooks and firm standards. As we move with technology, what you will find is that your SOP will be less relevant. You will find what matters more is how you show up in the human side, and what's the standard output that you want, right? Because tech is going to be able to surface different ways. You and I think differently than you think. You process differently than I process. But tech will bring those two together in ways we can't imagine. But what the tech will need to know is what your standard is. So as you're trying to create a client-centered experience, what are the standards that you want to make sure happen? Second, I will say a best practice is scoping shorter projects. As I said earlier, when you're creating your projects, I gave you that framework for a project. Scope them smaller, one deliverable. What I find when people are scoping projects, it's too big, which means you can't price it, which means you can't give your clients a clear understanding of how it goes. So if you can price it with one deliverable, then that allows for you to scope it better. So scope shorter projects. As I said, shorter intakes. When you're thinking about services, I was talking about the journey. So you're designing for continuity, meaning you're designing for the North Star. You're not focusing just on the transaction. You're looking for the big North Star that they're looking to achieve. Define milestones that clients can understand. So inside of your projects, when you're thinking about how to organize your projects, the way you communicate to your clients what's important is what are the big things that are happening to move the needle. The client cares about that one deliverable. How do I get there? How do I share that information? And then just iterate from feedback. You can't design something without testing it well. So who cares what you have today? Once you have that one thing done, you have one project, doesn't have to be great, you got to put it out to your clients. Be honest, be transparent, you're doing something different, but let them use it. Let them give you feedback so you can see what's working or what's not. So as I'll say, design isn't about making something fancy, it is about being intentional with every step of the way. We could definitely go into way more, but with limited time, I can't do all that. So I will say take one step. If your engagement is too long, that's your step. If your intakes are 20 pages, that's your step. If you don't have a service or project journey, well, you have a framework to create them, and then you can keep going. I know we can go some questions, so this is how you can reach me. The book is Being is the New Doing by Radia Rhodes. I'm at booth 242, so you can stop by and chat. This should go to our offer for subscription week if you want to learn about that. Profit First, I love Profit First to design attention around money. That's a whole nother conversation we can have. Client-centered experience, money is an important part of it, and other things. Okay, questions. We have about a little less than 10 minutes left. Any questions, anything I can answer?
So when you first started, did you pick key clients to beta this with, or how did you start your subscription model for successful delivery and kind of?
Yeah, so I'll say my first was flat fees, and then it was subscription. But yeah, I would say always beta test it with a couple of clients, but don't get stuck in I think some of what we talked about here, you could just implement, period. When it comes to releasing a new model, yes, I definitely beta tested it with a few clients because that made it easier for me to get their feedback. I would say things like, hey, I'm doing something new. I would love your feedback. It is paid, right? But you can help me drive this experience. And so I knew who my ideal clients were and who I wanted to the same type of clients I wanted to bring into my firm. And so I wanted to test it on those people. That were the ideals. Yeah. Great. Other questions? Yep. Oh, hold on one second. And it could be any of the experience I'm happy to share. Yep.
Yeah, can you talk about how you determine the pricing for your subscription models?
Sure. So I put a number out. I mean, my first one, it was just a number. I pulled the number out the air. It was totally wrong. It was $500, but it didn't matter. I got paid, right? Literally, I pulled the number out the air. I was just like, what would it be? Oh, $500. And I thought, dang it, too low. But whatever, right? Because that's what happened. How I would do it now is I price the percentages, right? The number, people overcomplicate pricing. Pricing is important, but what matters more, what are the standards? So same with client-centered experience, standards matter, playbooks matter. So what's my standard across my firm that I want to make on my profit margin? What I want to make on how much I want to spend on labor, how much I want to spend on expenses. Once you understand those standards, i.e. the percentages, so Profit First is a book I would recommend. It's cash flow, not meant to replace. And that's how I would think about it. So I price the percentages. So for example, I can quickly say if a number will or won't work because I know what my delivery costs are. If my delivery costs are, I'll use $1,000. If I say I'll charge you $1,000 and my delivery costs are 25% across everything I do in my firm, that means I need to deliver that $1,000, whatever flat fee I just gave, at $250 of labor costs. It's a yes or no for me if I can or can't do that. If I can't, my price is wrong. Either I need to reduce the scope or raise my price, right? So how I price is that way. That took time to get there, but the simplest way is to price on percentages and focus on your delivery costs, and then have your other allocations go to other parts of your business. Hope that helps. And I'm happy to go into it a little bit more. But delivery costs are like labor costs. My career started in traditional labor, so I will say I was trained at the very beginning of my career in labor costing. So I did labor costing around employment and labor. And so that's how I think about it. But that's benefits, that's all in cost, things that you want to think about how you actually pay people to get the work done. And that's why billable hour is really like, it's a farce, right? Because we're just pulling a number that's supposed to have all these components. But the billable hour technically should be broken down in percentages on where does all those numbers go. And a lot of solo smalls, it may be big firm, they might do that better, but solo smalls, we don't, right? We just have a number and then we allocate when we need versus pricing with the job to be done kind of framework. Questions? Any other questions I can answer? Yeah, okay, there's all the way in the front. Sorry, give her 1 second. It's for the recording, so. Wait, one second. And if other people have questions, raise your hand too, because then she'll know and she'll see too. Okay, go for it.
For someone that does primarily hourly billing that is interested in this subscription model, how do you make that transition and what do I need to think about?
Yeah, so when you're designing client-centered experiences, that's how I first focus on. If you want to start transitioning and you're not sure, your first best step is probably flat fee, but you want to put a service journey together and then you want to put a project journey together. You want to get this framework of services and projects, get out of the idea that you're only in the transaction, right? Because even in the flat fee, there's a service and there's a project. It's just shorter time frame, and they're usually happening side by side. So if you can shift your brain to start thinking this way and just design very clearly what's happening at each phase with a project having one deliverable, that's a good first step. But to me, if you want to be really, you just rip off the Band-Aid and stop billing by the hour, right? And just understand that, okay, some of the numbers aren't going to work, but your job as the business is to make your delivery costs work, your labor costs work. And if you allocate your percentages, you will start you'll get closer very fast because you'll realize, okay, I have $5,000, I have a $10,000 job, I have $2,500 to labor cost it. When you start thinking about how many people need to be on that delivery team, you'll understand, well, I pay this person $100,000 a year, I pay this one $75,000 a year. Okay, you'll be able to create those numbers. But I would say rip off the Band-Aid and start being very intentional about how you move your work through a process. Yeah. Was there someone else? I'm sorry. Anyone? Oh, yeah. Right.
Good morning. Just to clarify, so are you taking the service, so let's say it's a trademark filing, and that's the project, and creating a service journey around that? So is a subscription for is it annually or is it just for that particular project? So
we're thinking about kind of designing a client-centered experience, right? And the two big components, three: client, services, projects, right? So I know who my client is, I have my service. The service can be any time frame you want, right? Whatever you want. I like monthly, some people like quarter, annual, kind of doesn't matter. But also the service could be any time frame. That's why it also could be a flat fee or a subscription. So the service is the overall North Star, what the client is trying to do. The products are the smaller components, and the product is under the service. So am I answering a question? Yeah.
Because it seems like this kind of
Yeah, the hierarchy is this: client, services, projects. Projects are inside of a service, and then the client buys a service, right? So they're buying a service. If my North Star, if I'm trying to get my trademark and it's a flat fee, well, what I'm really buying is getting my first mark registered, right? Great, that's the service. Right? What do I need to do to get that mark registered? I need to search, I need to file, I need to go through USPTO, I need to get registered. You get your certificate, go forth and conquer, right? That is the service, and then the smaller projects underneath it are the things that we typically do to move that service along. Hopefully, yeah. Right? So services and projects is the best way to think about it. I might be out of time, but yes, I am. I'm happy to, you can come meet me at booth 242. I'm happy to chat through all the things. If you're interested in subscriptions or in flat fees, we have our subscription week coming up. I teach you for 5 days. You get me to help you through it. But what I would say is take one action. Client-centered and design experience are not about you only woo. It's truly about intentional design. Get into the details, test it with your clients, and reach out if you need help. Thank you.